The following is from the Agency for Instructional Technology, AIT.
Foreshortening is a form of perspective, drawing something to give the illusion of depth. While the rules of perspective neatly apply to geometric shapes, foreshortening concerns irregular shapes, such as the human body, which are difficult to predict and plot mathematically. In this program, Paul will describe and demonstrate foreshortening.
I'm drawing a cylinder foreshortened. It's a cylinder in perspective, really. And it's in different views. Here's one view, here's another view. As it turns towards you, and it's directly pointed at you, it will look like this. Now here's a cylinder side view. You really can't tell it's a cylinder. It looks like a rectangle, except for the 1/3 shading method, which would cue you into that as being a cylinder. But here, if you turn the cylinder, you'll notice that the oval is very tight and small. And as it turns toward you, the oval enlarges, and it's aimed right at you. It's a complete circle. Now, if it passes on this way, then it goes through the same cycle and goes back into an oval and eventually would approach this, which would look like a rectangle. Now, you notice two things happen here. As the oval comes towards you, it becomes rounder toward a circle, and it becomes larger, and the shape changes of the sides. And when it's aimed right at you, it's a complete circle, and you can't tell it's a cylinder, it's a circle. Then we go the other way. Foreshortening. Fore means up front, forward. And the shortening means what's ever behind that is shortened. If you look at my arm, as it hangs here, it's probably 22 inches, 2 feet long. It's not foreshortened. But as I point towards you, then my arm becomes foreshortened. And the same things happen as happened on a geometric figure. The part that's forward and closest to you appears larger, whether it's pointed or a fist. And the parts behind it shorten, appear to shorten. So we draw them that way. And the same thing happens with the leg. The lower leg is not foreshortened. You see the length of it. But the upper leg is turned towards you. So you see the kneecap, and the upper leg then is drawn in a shorter drawing because it appears shorter. It's not really shorter. It just appears that way, and we draw things as they appear, not necessarily as they are. Foreshortening appears often when we're drawing action figures, especially if they're running towards you or running away from you. Let's take this situation. Here's the torso or the rib cage of a figure. Now, the rib cage is foreshortened because it's tilted towards you. And you're seeing the top of the shoulder here. The same way with the head. You would actually be seeing the top of the head. So you have a foreshortened torso. We put the rib cage, suggest a rib cage here. Now, the upper arm is not foreshortened. But as it turns toward you, then the lower arm becomes foreshortened. Because it's pointing toward you. Now the other arm will not be foreshortened to much of a degree because it's hanging pretty close to the body. Now the upper leg on the opposite side here will be foreshortened because it's toward you, as you saw my leg seated here in my chair. So you'll see a foreshortening, especially here of the upper leg and not so much of this leg. This upper leg is not foreshortened. You see almost the full length of it. But the lower leg is foreshortened. because it's turned away from you. So anytime you turn something of length away from you or towards you, you're going to foreshorten it. This arm would hardly be seen, and it would probably come out here. So you see the foreshortening here on the rib cage. No foreshortening here on the hip block. No foreshortening here on the upper leg, but foreshortening here because it's turned. Foreshortening on this upper leg because it's turned. And you could say there's some foreshortening actually on the head because you're looking down at the top of the head, so there would be some foreshortening of the face and the features. Now there's another form of foreshortening. That's if the eye level is way down here and you're looking up on a person. Then, as the figure rises in height, it appears to get smaller, especially if it's a large figure. And this is true of buildings too, but buildings can be handled easily in perspective. It's harder to set up a perspective for a non-geometric object. But if a person's standing here and your eye level is below the feet, way down here, then you are going to have another form of foreshortening. And here the features would be tilted this way and the chin tilted this way. And it would appear that the shoulders are narrower than they actually are, simply because they are further away. And the legs would appear to get smaller, and that means our eye level would be down here and we're looking up here, and the taller this object is, the more of a slope and a slant we're going to have converging lines toward the top. So here you see the foreshortening in the arms and legs, and here's the foreshortening in a full figure. Drawing cross-contour lines on a part that's foreshortened helps me. Let me see how I do this, and it may help you. Here's a foreshortened upper and lower arm. The hand is not foreshortened, it's turned towards you. So if I draw contour lines, lines that are following the shape of that foreshortened part, it helps me not only when draping, but shows the form. And it helps me when I come around to refine it and put the shape. Now here on the lower, or the upper leg here, we have the contour lines following this way, but down here, they would not be close together, and they would just be normal, as they would be over here. And then when I draw this shape around here, I see that these go together up here, and they really foreshorten. Foreshortening is one of the ways we show depth and distance in pictures. However, it does not make a good silhouette. But at times, if we want distance and depth in a picture and motion, we must sacrifice part of the silhouette for foreshortening. But usually that's only in one arm or one leg if drawing a figure, and not in the entire body. Now, in drawing, following up on the contour lines, plus the foreshortening on figures, foreshortening works about the same way if it's aimed at you or aimed away from you. Whatever is being pointed at you or pointed away. If this is a head here, and we have a rib cage here, we have a hip block here, and we're looking at the rear of the figure. This is the back of the figure. Now, if the arm is pointed here, we have a foreshortened upper arm, and we have a foreshortened lower arm, and the hand would be partially foreshortened. Out here, we could have the upper arm not foreshortened, seen in full length. But the lower arm here could be foreshortened, as it is here, So my helpful contour lines that I like would look this way here, but they'd be tighter here. And this helps me tell that that's foreshortened and turned, as opposed to something that isn't. Now, if the figure is seated here, you could have a foreshortened upper leg over here, and here my contour lines that would help me, but down here it's not foreshortened, so I wouldn't need them. And if we have a tree stump or a stool or a chair here, we wouldn't have foreshortening as we would call it, but we would have perspective there. And that's what foreshortening really is. It's a form of perspective. So think about, in drawing especially figures or animals, if you have geometric figures, as we said before, it's better to go to linear perspective because you can predict it. But it's very hard to predict it scientifically in drawing a figure or animal. So we remember the things that we've talked about today and the helps we have in knowing what happens once it starts turning. The farthest part either gets larger if it's pointed towards you, or it gets smaller if it's pointing away from you. And you can still foreshorten one arm or one leg and tone it in and have a good silhouette. But it does show distance. And not only distance, it helps to show action. It's hard to draw foreshortening, though, because you have so few lines to work with once you turn something away from you or you turn something towards you.
To practice drawing foreshortened figures, have someone sit facing you with their arms resting on their legs. Sketch the figure using contour lines on the portions which are foreshortened.
Foreshortening is not only used in drawing figures, other objects, but also can be used in drawing animals. Here we're looking at the horse. We can see that the body is foreshortened because it's turned away from us. Even the head's foreshortened. And as the horse is running, the hind legs, and you see the hooves of the hind legs and the hooves of the front leg here, which means the upper legs of the horse would be foreshortened. And even on little cartoons such as the dog here, you see almost the full face, but as the body is turned, it's foreshortened. Now the same way here, if I make a drawing, let's say this is a deer. And I'll start with the deer looking at me. So even the head would be foreshortened. You would only see the front view, and you couldn't tell the side shape. But you wouldn't have the foreshortening on the ears.
When you foreshorten an object or a part of the human body, you're creating the illusion of depth. The portion nearest you will appear larger, and its apparent length will change, creating a unique shape. Often drawing cross-contour lines can help you visualize and draw the foreshortening. Paul Ringler is produced by the Agency for Instructional Technology in association with the Oklahoma Educational Television Authority.